Welcome to a slightly delayed post-game episode of The Independent. I'm Pete Sampson back at the Media Hotel by the Fort Lauderdale Airport after Notre Dame's 27-24 victory over Penn State in the semifinals. Sends Notre Dame to the national championship game for the first time in 2012 in search of their first title, first time since 1988. And Matt, I know that we sort of addressed this post-Georgia last week of like that was a game that Notre Dame had been waiting 31 years to win. I have not covered a better Notre Dame win than this one tonight in terms of like entertainment value, like the twists and turns of the game. It was an incredible game to be at and to sort of see unfold the way that it did. There were moments where I thought Notre Dame was about to get blown out. Then I thought Notre Dame had it. Then I thought, well, there's no way they can come back from another fourth quarter deficit, only for them to actually do it. And Frank, like you mentioned this before we hit record, like the game went pretty close to how we thought
we nailed it.
Actually going
we
to
nailed
go.
It. Yes. They each scored one more time. 2017, it was 27-24, close enough. Sorry, underbetters. I said Penn State's a better team. They're the deeper team, the more talented team. I don't know how, but Notre Dame's going to make a timely play and win. And you had, I think, 28-20. And you said Notre Dame is fatigued, which concerns you, but you don't trust Drew Raller, who ultimately was the difference of this game. At risk of oversimplifying it, Drew Raller is the reason Penn State is the reason Notre Dame is going to the national championship game. I mean,
and James Franklin, but yes, Drew Raller for sure.
Franklin, the pregame, I guess you could talk a little bit more about that. I don't think the game itself was on Franklin, but the Penn State was dominating that first half and had very little to show for it. And there are a number of like kind of smaller plays that I think ultimately came back to bite them and kept the door open for Notre Dame. I think the biggest play of the game, and people will forget about it, Emil Wagner recovering Steve Angeli's fumble, which looked like, I believe it was Abdul Carter looked live like he had it.
Abdul Carter got everything else. Why wouldn't he get that?
Right. And I know it was only 3 points, but you go into halftime shutout off a turnover, it's completely different. To have your backup quarterback come in there to get on the board, to start winning the middle. They technically lost the middle 8 because their touchdown at the start of the second half came 4 minutes and like 20 seconds in. So they lost it 7-3. However, clearly they turned the tide at the end of the first half, at the beginning of the second half. And I just thought that was so important to build their confidence. I think I was even texting you because we didn't know the status of Riley Leonard until he came out for the third quarter. Riley Leonard looked completely lost in the first half. And this has not been a great passing offense all season long. I think I texted you, like, am I crazy? Or like, if they want to mount a comeback, Angeli might be better here just because you might throw the ball downfield more and they might open the offense up more. And fortunately for them, Leonard was fine. I don't know. I mean, I'm no expert. I don't know if I've ever seen someone go in a concussion protocol and be okay. I feel like that's usually like the death sentence. You're out for 3 weeks. Don't ask. But he seemed fine. He sounded fine post game. And look, he's very, very flawed. Nick Saban basically spent all game day saying this is not the guy they thought they were getting, but they've made it work. And I think that's kind of sums it up pretty well. I mean, he's a tough SOB. He's got the baby face and the aw shucks attitude, but they went third down. They were 11 of 17. And I'm betting at least half those were Leonard runs up the middle, which you knew was coming every time, and they still couldn't really stop it. And kept them in the game. It was obviously a game with a lot of twists and turns, hitting Jaden Greathouse at the end there for the big pass. I mean, first 100-yard receiver they've had all game. Somehow he doesn't get bowl game offensive MVP. Riley Leonard does.
Oh, yeah. No, I voted for Greathouse. I also voted for
people actually voted on this. So I don't.
Yeah. I was asked to vote, but my votes were ignored, apparently.
But it was just one of those games. I never thought they're, even though they were like getting physically dominated, I never thought they were really out of it. I just thought Penn State did not strike that death blow that they probably had the chance to do in the first half.
Right.
And I thought, especially with that field goal, as long as you keep it within one possession, you're going to have a chance. And I know it sounds cliche and corny and cheesy, but like there is a belief about this team that they're never going to be out of it and they're just going to find a way. And they did it even after, they couldn't get into field goal range on the second to last drive. They're given a gift. And I'm watching that thinking again, if you're Penn State, you probably like you can't play for overtime. Like, you don't come this far just to take a knee.
Right.
But I'm also like, I haven't seen anything from Drew Aller that makes me think he's going to make something happen now. 2 picks. The first one was a clear hold on Christian Gray. The second one, I did not like that PI.
Oh, I hated
The
that one.
announcers and Matt Austin, the ref, loved it. They thought it was by the book call.
Ugh.
Whatever. That was a terrible freaking throw. Like, what was he thinking?
Yeah.
He misfired. The Singleton one, you can blame both on the pass where they had to settle for a field goal on 3rd and
Oh,
short.
it hit him in the hip.
Although play before
That was
that,
just like that was so much of Drew Aller tonight in that throw. Is like he doesn't throw it, he aims it.
well, and
He was
play
aiming the
before
ball at
that, which isn't Aller's fault, was a high snap,
Mm.
which ended up being a
Yeah.
2-yard loss, and that changes everything, especially with the way Penn State was running the ball. And then he had, I think it was Katron Allen. He had probably a 90-yard touchdown pass to him. They completely just overthrew him on a wheel route in I want to say the 4th quarter. It just, zero completions to wide receivers. And same thing against Ohio State. How is that possible?
Yeah.
Warren's awesome. Those running backs are awesome. The offensive line played really good. I thought they were going to wear Notre Dame's defense out at the end, and they almost did. But it was, it's a gritty Notre Dame team that never gives up. And Mitch Jeter, what more can you say? I mean, he was the biggest question mark coming into the playoff, and save for one block kick against Indiana, he's been money. And even I think the confidence to play for 3 there at the end with him, and I'm watching it, feeling pretty confident he's going to get it. All those jitters or all that unease I think all of us had about the kicking game in the regular season is now gone out the window. And hats off to him for delivering at the end.
Yeah, I mean he's Texas A&M, Georgia, Penn State tonight. I mean he's been phenomenal. Was that 7? Is it 7 of 7? All I think are they all 40-yarders or more?
He got blocked at Indiana.
Oh no, I'm just saying, Georgia, Penn State, A&M.
Sorry.
Yeah, I know he got the block at IU, but also hit a 47-yarder against the Hoosiers too. But yeah, I thought tonight this was kind of one of my sneaking suspicions of the game, and I think that we talked about this. Is like I couldn't articulate why I thought Notre Dame might run out of gas. I just thought that they might. In the first half, it looked like they had run out of gas to me, and they were just holding on for dear life. And they were also running out of players.
Right.
When you losing Leonard would have been devastating, I think, over the course of the game. They're fortunate to have Angeli step up there. But I was like, okay, Abdul Carter, but now you're going to put Tosh Baker out there instead of Anthony Knapp. Like, Emil Wagner is already on skates the whole game here. I was floored that the offensive line was able to hold up. Charles Jagasaw comes in for Rocco Spindler and frankly felt like almost an improvement and spots of how physical and athletic he is. That was super impressive to me. But I just thought that okay, on top of the Jeremiah Love injury, where I had been hearing through the week if he probably will play, okay, definitely will play, but might not contribute to he feels 70%. And I'm like, okay. I thought he would be a placeholder out there. Instead, he's hurdling the guy, which was impressive. But the touchdown run at the beginning of the 4th quarter was, I think it was through 4 defenders with a knee brace on. That's crazy. That is crazy to me that you're able to do that.
And even with, that run was unbelievable. But even without that run, I just think his presence on the field gives a jolt of energy to everyone on that offense, even if he's 7/10 of himself. And what I think he had 11 carries a night, which is as high for a playoff game so far. But I just think it just makes things better. And look, go look at the stats. I told you before the game,
the greatest 11 carry 45-yard performance of all time.
If I tell you before the game, Notre Dame will get outrushed by 88 yards. They would give up 5 sacks and only get 1 themselves. Wouldn't feel pretty good about their chances.
Lose the turnover battle.
Yeah. Bad picks too by Leonard.
Yeah. The second one. The
first
was
a great play, but it was a dumb. Yeah.
The first one is a bad throw, but it's a deep shot on 3rd down. It's a bad punt essentially. The second one, I was like, well, this is it. They can't stop them here, and they didn't. And then Notre Dame's going to be out of gas, and Leonard's going to have to throw it. and they're not going to be able to do it. Like Leonard is not going to be able to beat somebody with his arm. And lo and behold, Jaden Greathouse, my favorite receiver, who I always talk up on the show, but like hasn't quite, done it. I mean, puts one guy in his ass and then puts another guy in his ass for a 54-yard touchdown. Like, if I'm not mistaken, it's the first 100-yard performance by a receiver this year. Is that right?
Yeah, first since the Sun Bowl, Jordan Faison.
Yeah, since Faison in the post. Like, and if I'm not mistaken, under Marcus Freeman, they've had 5 100-yard performances from wide receivers, and 4 of them have come in bowl games.
I thought you were going to say 4 were Michael Mayer.
No, it's just like it was, 2 in the Fiesta Bowl, 1 in the Sun Bowl, and then 1 in the Orange Bowl. And then Rico Flores against somebody. Wait for
that Aeneas Williams got a 36-yard catch on a wheel route to open things up.
That's another thing. Like, Marcus Freeman has talked about misfits, and like I think it's like kind of I see what you're trying to say, but like it's not really working for me about this concept of like you don't fit in at Notre Dame,
right?
I guess, but I get what you're saying. But tonight you're like, okay, here's the offensive line. It's Jagasaw, Baker, Coogan, Schrouth, Wagner. The quarterback is Angeli. The running back is Aeneas Williams. You throw in like Eli Raridon, maybe Davis Sherwood. No Bo Collins. Like, didn't even get to that.
What happened? Yeah, what happened there?
No idea. I have no idea. It was like
flu, I guess. I don't know.
It's completely lost to this game. What was going on with Bo Collins? But it just like they were kind of the Isle of Misfit Toys out there on offense at the end of the second quarter, and like that. It was one of the great field goal drives the second quarter that you could possibly imagine. Yeah. And they put it together with just like I want to say like spare parts or anything, but it's kind of what it was. It was super impressive.
No, I'm completely with you. I mean, I thought that drive was just so pivotal just to get 3 out of it after it looked like Penn State had really seized momentum. Mitchell Evans, I thought, stepped up big too, bigger than I think he's been throughout the course of the season. I felt like when nothing was working on offense, Leonard, for the most part, could count on getting him for a 5-yard dump off, a 7-yard dump off, et cetera, et cetera. It was almost an extension of the running game. But I mentioned Bo Collins, but was there anything I mean, I know there were reports all day about the flu and this and that. And from what I gather, it's nothing we haven't been dealing with all month. I mean, I didn't see anyone throwing up on the sideline or anything crazy.
It seemed like much ado about nothing. It felt like, oh, you're a team from the Midwest in January who's been playing football for 6 months. Like, maybe your immune system's not like killing it right now. So it didn't seem like it. It's like I think the locker room was like maybe supposed to be open and it wasn't. So maybe there were guys like puking in trash cans back there. I don't know. But everyone seemed good. It was it didn't strike me as a team that was ill before the game. I just thought like they're going to be worn down after the Georgia game. They'll 2 less days of prep, and then Penn State's had a little bit of a easier runway to this point than Notre Dame has. Like that's going to show itself, and it kind of did in the first half. Like I thought, I'm surprised. Like Penn State really should have been up 14-0 or 14-3, and they weren't. And
that's the difference in a game like this.
I just felt like they sort of seized up in the second half. I did ask Al Golden, like, so what'd you guys do in the third quarter to like stop them? And he's like, I'll be honest with you, like my call sheet was pretty vanilla tonight. We just didn't set the edge. We didn't drop to the right depth. Like he was like, we did a lot of shit that was out of character for us in the first half. Like we just didn't play well, which was kind of gets to the big concern, right? Like Notre Dame's just going to run into a night where they just don't have it. And that was that first half, but they had it just enough that they were able to sort of keep Penn State around and then start to turn the screw and turn the screw and turn the screw. And ultimately that was enough.
It's funny, but between the flu stuff, which again, I don't know how much there was to it. I'm not sure how much I was buying it pregame, but between the line movement just going crazy pregame from Notre Dame 2.5 point favorites to being a 1.5 point underdog. And then watching game day and seeing Nick Saban there with the Notre Dame paint in that stadium in the end zone right behind him, I was just like, that's a sight I've seen before, and it doesn't usually bode well for Notre Dame. Like I got less and less confident in Notre Dame by the week, even though I picked them to win.
I mean, look, the only thing they had was positive movement for Notre Dame was Shane Gillis's extra interview about like giving Nick Saban crap on College game day in South Bend, and how he did pick him up like an old guy, just
McAfee and Herbie
helping a stranger an old guy cross the street.
By the way, if it's Texas Notre Dame, Shane's going to be a man divided. He's in all these commercials wearing Texas hats. I believe he lives in Austin.
Yeah, I feel like he's sort of out there with Notre Dame now, though.
I would think so. Yeah,
I think
you don't want to quit on them now.
No, I think you got to roll with that. But it just I was going to tweet out like end of the first quarter 0-0. Notre Dame breaks the streak of being down 14-0 at the end of the first quarter at Hard Rock Stadium because that was what happened the last two. But because Penn State was at the 3-yard line, I thought better of it. However, they did get a stop, so maybe I should have. Yeah, it was just the other things in the second half. I thought I didn't get a chance to talk to Mike Denbrock about, but like they were able to get their run game working. It seemed like they had some concepts that hit. I'm not a football coach. I couldn't really explain why, but like
no, but I'm glad they stuck with it, even though it wasn't working.
They did.
But just not to Craig McElroy broke it down post game, and he said they waited way too long for holes up in the first half. Penn State's D was way too fast, and they just put their foot in the dirt and put their head down and went after it in the second half, which, to the untrained eye like me, sounds about right, and it worked.
Yeah, and I will say, like the third down, the third down call where Greathouse got maybe like 13 yards on ultimately the game-winning drive. Penn State had been doing this like mad dash blitz right before the snap all game, and Notre Dame did not react to it very well. They would false start, or they just like throw it into the dirt, or like get blown up. And on that play, Denbrock had Leonard roll out left, throw back. I mean, it's kind of a dicey throw for a quarterback.
Yeah,
like not on it. But Greathouse made a great play, scooted upfield. That put Mitch Jeter in position to make the difference. That was an incredible call that I'd love to get into Denbrock. Get into it with Denbrock more about like what was the adjustment to the adjustment there, because that was something that didn't work at all in the first half. It was just a dead play, and they figured out how to turn it into a setting up for a game-winning field goal.
They were at the 35 there, so if that doesn't work, I mean, 52 yards is no, especially with the way he kicks it low. I mean, that's very dicey. I thought, excuse me. Yeah, obviously, I think we both thought this game could come down to a few plays and come down to the end. I know this might be outside the box thinking, but especially since they decided to go for it, at the end of the game and it backfired. Penn State had a 4th and 3 at their own 32 with 2:37 left, and they punted. Now, that sounds conventional, but I just think with 2:37, the 2-minute warning, and 3 timeouts, it's impossible for a team to run out. Like, I would have gone for it if I were Penn State there just to keep Notre Dame on their toes. They've been running the ball well.
Yeah.
I think at the worst case scenario, you give up a field goal and you still have time left, more time than you probably would have ultimately with the final drive. I just thought that was a part. And again, no one was really questioning it on the broadcast or anything real time, but I just thought it was one of those games where you're going to have to steal possessions, and the way Notre Dame moved the football, they were not going to get all that time off the clock. They couldn't do it when they got it, on the punt on that drive.
No, and it's like, look, Marcus Freeman was still aggressive in this game, maybe less so than other games. Thought maybe they'd try to manage that. I don't know if it was their first drive where they had like a 4th and 8. Evans got a ball forced to him that he couldn't quite catch. Aeneas Williams was open in the flat, maybe for a 4-yard gain. You turn that into a 3rd and 8 into a 4th and 4, and maybe you go for it, but you got a punt on 4th and 8. Like, there weren't any big fakes. They didn't have the Georgia plays tonight to break the game open, but they stopped Penn State from making them themselves. I do think we recorded our pregame podcast probably like 12 hours too early because the press conference the day before the game between Freeman and Franklin, usually those are like throwaway stuff.
Yeah.
Like, why am I here to take a photo of guys holding citrus fruit? But when Franklin started talking about, Freeman is like, "How old are you?" And Freeman was like, "I'm 38." And like great hairline. It was, I think Freeman took it as like, "You don't think I belong here? Like, you're not my mentor. I'm not your mentee. You're not my dad. Shut the hell up." And I started getting wind that like Freeman was livid post press conference, and in the team meeting, like went off on James Franklin and disrespect and all that, which would have made a great story if Notre Dame won. And I, for a time, was like, I don't know if this is going to work out. But when they pulled it out, I talked to Xavier Watts about it. I talked to Jeremiah Love about it. I talked to Steve Angeli about it. I talked to Jack Kaiser about it. And they were all like, yeah, that was a different kind of team meeting on Wednesday at the Diplomat Hotel down on the beach, because he came in and some of them knew what was coming because they had seen some stuff on social media about it. Some of them were like, what is this about? But yeah, Jeremiah Love talked about sort of the disrespect, and even was like, what was it? Pull up his quote. Was like, he talked about like, oh yeah, here's the quote: "I'm not going to speak on their head coach, but we felt like their team didn't really respect us. So coming into this game, we wanted to come into this game and make a statement, be the aggressors, dominate them physically. That's the message: be physical and play violent." And then Xavier Watts, Coach Freeman was angry. He was angry with the press conference, that thing, whatever was going down between that. He was mad about that. The anger went toward us, and that anger went onto the field. And then the chef's kiss was from Jack Kaiser in reference to Franklin calling Freeman, like asking him how old he was, just 38. We're in the locker room talking, and over Kaiser's shoulder is this big digital clock, and it's 12:17 a.m. So it's January 10th. Kaiser turns and he was like, "Just so you know, 17 minutes ago, Coach Freeman turned 39. So he's not that young guy that a lot of people treat him as." And you're just like, my God. I'm not saying James Franklin is responsible for what happened, but I'm saying in a game where you needed everything to work, if you're Notre Dame, the opposing head coach like gifted you something that just helped you a little bit more. And that I think is just an incredible bit of self-inflicted theater here on the part of Penn State's head coach. I just couldn't believe it.
It's funny to hear all, because like I saw the press conference and the headlines for the most part were the conference thing, which
Yeah.
I get it gets clicks, but like whatever. I didn't like, everyone says that, didn't really register with me as anything all that controversial. I did see the parts that you referenced, and I wasn't in the room, so you don't get as good of a temperature for it.
Yeah.
I didn't obviously talk to the players like you did, but it is pretty remarkable. Like just how he kind of stepped right into that, or walked right into that voluntarily, right? I mean, it's like
Freeman. Oh, God, I thought Freeman wanted to punch.
It's like Kirk Cignetti in the first round.
Like,
the Big
what
Ten
are we
coaches
doing?
are.
It's like, what are we doing here? Like, that's like, I think there's some naivety apart on these older coaches for not understanding how Freeman ticks. Because, like, if you spend any time around Freeman, you know this is exactly the kind of thing that pisses him off in a way that, like, he's going to try to take it out on you. I thought, if anything, this might have gone over the line in favor of Penn State because Freeman would somehow psych himself out. Like he would get too pissed off about it. But there is nothing, as a colleague or a friend of Freeman's who goes way back, like 20, 25 years. And he once told me, is like, the worst thing you can ever say to Marcus Freeman is, "I'm proud of you." Because Freeman takes that as like, well, you didn't think I deserved to be here, or you didn't think I'd make it this far, or you didn't believe in me. And he takes it as almost like an act of condescension. And what Franklin did, I thought, was like basically pat him on the head like he was a kid. And that is like taking it to another level entirely. And that spectacularly blew up in a way that, like, if James Franklin could have seen it coming, obviously he would have avoided it. So I'm just going to have to assume that he had no idea.
I don't know. I mean, I told you, he's got a lot of Brian Kelly in him in the sense of like, they just
man.
can't help themselves in some of these situations when they get in front of the podium. And again, both those guys, I've said this before, both those guys in one-on-one settings or in informal settings are awesome. Both of them, when they get in front of a podium, it's just like they're
can't
in
help it.
Sales mode and they just can't help themselves. It's weird. Like I don't know, but it's I got, not that I want to compare the two, but when you said the worst thing you could say to Marcus Freeman is "I'm proud of you," I was thinking of Chip Long, who said the worst phrase in the English language is "good job."
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. That was an old Chipism. That was a good one. But it's funny. I know, just to further illustrate this point, I was texting with, let's just say, a former colleague of Marcus Freeman's at Notre Dame who also knows James Franklin really well. And he was watching the press conference on Wednesday with his wife and was like, "Oh boy, I know what that look is like, man, for Marcus. Like, that's not good. It's not good for James." So I definitely, it was not like, sometimes you wonder, is like, am I reading this correctly? Like, am I just off? Am I making up a narrative here that doesn't exist? Like, that actually happened. And I think it's a bit, the game, like, Notre Dame needed everything. When you win on a last-second field goal, you needed everything. That was just more stuff that Penn State afforded Notre Dame that they did not have to do.
We made it this far without mentioning the third-year coach thing, which we talked about all summer, but 4 of them have won it. A 5th made it there. A 6th has made it there. Has a chance to win it. Something about the juju in South Bend with third-year coaches. I mean, it's pretty remarkable, especially with this team where they started.
The first third-year coach who was only a third-year coach. You know what I mean? Like, the other guys had coached elsewhere. You know, whether it be Era,
Leahy did, yeah.
Yeah, Era Northwestern, Brian Kelly everywhere, Lou Holtz everywhere.
Devine was Packers, right?
Packers, yeah. It's just like, that's where Freeman is the exception. And I know, like, there was a lot of talking points about, hey, the first black head coach to coach for a national championship game, which is incredible. But the first-year coach, the first-time head coach at Notre Dame, I should say, to sort of survive this gauntlet and tap into the third-year juju here that's pretty incredible, because this place is not set up for first-time head coaches to make it.
I'll say I saw this coming after A&M and immediately canceled all plans a week later with NIU, as I think the rest of the world did. But if I could pat myself on the back one more time, I want to go back to what I wrote after that A&M game, where they had a number of transfer portal players step up on that final drive and win. And I said, quote, "I focus on Notre Dame being A&M because I wonder how much that kind of connectivity is going to matter in the championship race and what will be the longest college football season ever. A team could play upward of 17 games this season. 2 teams will play on January 20th. How hard will it be to keep a group of 85-plus guys focused and determined for that long? Look at the calendar as is. There will be coaching changes and portal movement happening all throughout the playoff. Backups on playoff teams, who by definition are very good players, will undoubtedly be in demand elsewhere. It's a program's culture strong enough to sustain those kind of distractions," end quote. I think I nailed it with Notre Dame, especially when you look at all the guys who stepped up tonight, particularly on that offensive line.
Yeah, and it's just like, it was such an interesting juxtaposition from Georgia tonight, where, like, Georgia was like all the grad transfers who came in. Like, how do you assimilate in the program here? How do you, like, accept a lesser role and, like, still contribute? Tonight, it's like these season-long backups or guys who haven't played at all that have been passed over or beaten out. Like, how do you stay ready to go? Like, Tosh Baker, to this point in the playoff, the best thing that we've known him for is, like, the guy he flips over the down marker in the locker room that says, like, "You're going to the Sugar Bowl. You're going to the Orange Bowl. You're going to the national championship game." Like, the idea that Tosh Baker was going to contribute as a starting left tackle on a national championship contender was ridiculous.
60 snaps all season, according to McDonough.
Yeah. And yet he's out there and did a half-decent job against the best defensive end Notre Dame has seen all season. I'm not saying it was great, but, like, didn't need to be great. It just needed to be good enough to get Mitch Jeter in position to kick a 41-yard field goal.
They had a stat on the broadcast on Notre Dame's second drive of the second half. It said Abdul Carter missed 1 snap in the first half. He missed 3 snaps on Notre Dame's first drive of the second half and resulted in 52 yards for Notre Dame.
That guy was freak. I'm trying to think of like a better defensive performance that I've seen in person than Abdul Carter.
Probably someone from Georgia on that 2017 team, but I mean, individually
like
it was
Roquan
up there.
Smith, maybe,
or Christian Wilkins and Dexter. Lawrence was suspended for that game, but I mean, they've played better defenses than this. Yeah, I don't know if they had one guy who dominated the way this one did.
Just like it was in the second half, and Riley Leonard got outside. I think he juked a defender or defensive lineman in the backfield, and it was kind of a sprint right. And usually, once Riley Leonard takes off, it's good for 8 yards. There's nobody else out there except for Abdul Carter, who was a step behind him. And then Riley Leonard was like, shit. I had nothing here. I'm just throwing this away. There's no edge when Abdul Carter is chasing you down. I mean, I think we already mentioned this. I voted him for defensive MVP of the game because he wrecked whatever Notre Dame was trying to do whenever he was in there. It was a spectacular performance. And not to get too down the road against Penn State, but I mean, if you have Abdul Carter, Tyler Warren, Singleton, Allen, a good offensive line, a quarterback who should be better than he was tonight, you're not going to get this shot. I mean,
or that draw in the bracket
against a brutally beaten up Notre Dame team.
No, but the bracket, I mean, they not saying they sleptwalked their way here, but it was set up for them.
Yeah. And I'm just next year you're going to lose a lot of this. And that is it has to be a brutal loss for Penn State. In part because it's Notre Dame, but mostly it's because you don't get opportunities like this very often.
No, and even when they lost to Ohio State earlier this year, the way they lost sucked for Penn State, but it was also the better team won that game. Ohio State messed around too much and let Penn State in it. I don't know, and this isn't the more talented team did not win this game. The better football team collectively did, Notre Dame.
For sure.
But of all, whatever the record is for James Franklin in big games now, I feel like I'm an apologist because he does not have the better team in any of those games, kind of like Brian Kelly did in Notre Dame. This one he did. And again, I think this one is squarely on his quarterback and not him, at least within the white lines. Obviously, what you shared may have contributed to some stuff that happened on the field tonight. But boy, is there anything NFL draft scouts love more than tall, thin, white quarterbacks? It's just,
oh my God.
And pregame on game day, they're he might still come out. He could be one of the first quarterbacks taken this year.
Yeah.
I'm just
come out to do what?
Okay. Is the quarterback class that bad this year? I mean, Shedeur Sanders is pretty damn good. Cam Ward's pretty good.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of interest in 6'5" quarterbacks who aim their passes, opposed to just
This is not in his defense, but God, the receivers are terrible. And to Notre Dame's credit, man coverage. I mean, they just did not give them any chance to get open all night long.
No,
I mean, just an incredibly impressive performance by Notre Dame secondary tonight. But just very, very strange. I mean, they ran the ball so well in the first half. You wondered if they would even bother to get away from it, and they did not throw the ball much. But very, very disappointing performance, obviously, from Drew Aller. Mentioned Mitch Jeter. I believe he improved to 4 and 4 out of 5 on career game-winning kicks. Go-ahead kicks, the one miss being NIU, which, again, I don't blame anyone for missing.
No, not on
62-yarder. Also, a crazy stat they showed on the broadcast. I hope I'm quoting this right. In college football playoff history, kickers were 0 for 4 in the fourth quarter on go-ahead field goals.
Really?
And I can only I'm trying to think, Alabama, Georgia, 17, I was at that one. Ohio State, Georgia, a couple years ago. Obviously, there are 2 more, but I can't think of. But just an incredible game. I mean, we're here recording this at, I think it's 3:20 your time now, and it's just the thoughts are still just, coming.
We can get into a few questions from our readers, but our listeners, but it just in terms of because this is the first semifinal game, in the playoff era, how many semifinal games have been better than this one? That Rose Bowl with Oklahoma and who was it?
Georgia.
Georgia, yeah.
Last year's Rose Bowl was really good. Similar. I
Yeah.
think Alabama,
Yeah,
Michigan.
that was good.
Both semis last year were really good. Texas, Washington, both came down to last play.
Okay. Yeah, those are
Ohio
both
State,
good.
Georgia, but there aren't many. I mean, there have been a few
No.
in recent years, but there aren't many.
Yeah, Ohio State, Georgia, that was a phenomenal game a couple years ago.
Even TCU, Michigan, because of the surprise factor of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, they're historically the semis have been bloodbaths, and not the case this year.
No, it was a phenomenal it was a phenomenal performance. It was a great atmosphere. There was somebody asked a question about it was from Jay McCormick. Pete, what did you think of the stadium breakdown for the fan base?
Hey, I meant to ask you that.
It was kind of hard to tell because like the press box is low, so you don't really see the upper deck. I thought there was more Penn State than there was Notre Dame. But it wasn't like it was for Georgia Notre Dame a week earlier when it felt like more was like 2-1 at least. This felt more like 60-40, 55-45, something like that. But it was loud. It wasn't crazy. I thought, the Sugar Bowl was louder. But it was a good crowd. It was a hell of a lot quieter than the last time I was here for a game. That's for sure.
I feel like every single person I went to college with was at the game tonight. They went all out for it, and they were not happy. But that's a great stadium. I will say it's middle of nowhere relative to like when you're getting there. But it's a really cool stadium since renovations.
Yeah, the Formula One track in the parking lot is a little confusing when you're trying to leave. But shout out to Andrea Adelson from ESPN for driving me back to the hotel and not just cutting it up like she's on Mario Kart in real life.
Florida woman, she knows her way around there.
Yes. It was great.
Before we get to some more questions, wanted to thank some of our sponsors. Obvious Shirts. You've seen the shirts, the quarter zips, the hoodies. We even had some release post game after Marcus Freeman's turn at the stand on the podium. We have these guys are a bunch of savages and savages with a shamrock above one of the A's. Shout out Aaron Boone. I'm a Yankee fan. He really started that savages trend going a few years ago. But great quotes, great T-shirts. You can find them all at obviousshirts.com. We've been very pleased with the sales so far and appreciate all of you guys who have sent us pictures and have asked questions about where and when you can get some more. So if you got any ideas, by all means, send them our way. Thanks to our partners at Obvious Shirts.
Do we have violence? Is there a violence Obvious Shirts yet? Like, we got a text.
Do we have one?
I feel like there needs to be a violence shirt, like just violence. Like that, I think that would be a big seller for us. Also, thank you to Roback.com. Again, quarter zips, polos, joggers, shorts, workout tees, hoodies, basically everything that I'm wearing all the time when I'm not covering college football game. You go to Roback.com, use promo code Irish. They have officially licensed Notre Dame gear, hoodies, polos, etc. There's a quarter zip there. You can use the promo code Irish, get 20% off your first order. Just go over to Roback.com. And then also Future Fans, which is one of our newer sponsors. If you want to help your kids understand football, Future Fans is a new brand that helps kids 4 to 8 become big sports fans through storybook-led activity boxes that help them understand football. And what makes Future Fans unique is it introduces the core concepts of a sport that make sense to a kid. 4 tries for 6 points, downs. So it's designed for kids 4 to 8, and it helps them understand the sport that you already love. So you can go to futurefans.com, use promo code Irish, and get 15% off the college football or the football activity box. That's $49.99. So 15% off that at futurefans.com, promo code Irish.
Let's get some questions. We'll start with friend of the show, Regine. Note to OSU in Texas, don't let this team be close in the fourth quarter on the 20th. Yeah, I mean, you look at a game like this and you think, how could they possibly have one more in them? And yet, do you really want to bet against them? I mean, I don't. They're underdogs on their early betting lines for both games. 9.5, I think I saw for Ohio State, and I want to say Texas was like 3. Boy, the storylines with Ohio State, if it is them,
Oh God,
and it's
almost like it's like suffocating already.
And you know what? I actually think that would work in a weird way. I think that would work in Notre Dame's favor because I think, well, one, the Lou Holtz thing will come up a lot.
Oh,
and Day tends to get in his own head with these things. And That's a
Ooh.
fan base that will not be pleased with him unless he wins it all this year. And even though they're the favored to do that, I think the fact he's facing an Ohio State alum who, while secure at Notre Dame and there for the long term, I think that adds an element of like, you better win because we're going to be claiming for the other guy if you don't. Like, there are a lot of mental gymnastics with that program because how else do you explain them losing 2 games this year? When they're firing on all cylinders, they're unfreaking believable.
Yeah.
And I do think if it was that easy, they would have done it every week, and they haven't. So, and also, we can talk about it now. It was Will Howard or Riley Leonard for Notre Dame in the offseason, and they chose Riley Leonard. I think they made the right choice. Not to say Will Howard can't win the championship because he can. I also think if you put each quarterback in the opposite teams, neither would be nearly as successful as they've been at their current team. So that will get talked about plenty in lead up to the game as well. But do you have a?
Yeah, I mean, would there be any Quinn Ewers Notre Dame stories to talk about, or no?
Well, he might go in the portal in a week. So
yeah, that's kind of where I was trying to go with that.
Okay. Oh, that's right. That's right. Sorry, forgot Colin Coward. Right.
Yeah. So I mean, we got that going too. I think
Terry Joseph's on that staff, isn't he?
Yeah, Terry Joseph's on that staff. Keenan Bailey,
Bill Reese. Bill Reese is on that staff. Texas.
Ooh. I forgot about that. I was going to Keenan Bailey's the Ohio State's tight ends coach, the Notre Dame alum.
Who was his roommate at Notre Dame? Friend of the show.
We have so many friends. I don't know who.
Mike Monaco.
Oh, I did. Ooh, okay. We've got all sorts of juicy. I mean,
that's what I saw. Keenan
a lot of material for this championship game, man.
I saw Keenan at Wrigley Field the week we had Monaco on, I think, or the week after, and he was like, "What the?" I was like, "Yeah, small world." But yeah, the Ohio State one in particular. James Laurinaitis back at Ohio State after being at Notre Dame. Yeah, just a ton of connections with both those programs. Maybe they can bring out Urban Meyer and he won't get booed like he did tonight when he made the Orange Bowl Hall of Fame.
I love the. There was a moment. I think it was pregame where they're doing the game day. So it's McAfee, Saban, Herb Street, Reese, Desmond. And so, but then you see in the background, like Brady Quinn walk by.
All the Fox guys.
These banners go up for Matt Leinart and Urban Meyer. And I was like, this is the battle of the pregame shows happening in real life at the Orange Bowl. So, yeah, there would just be a lot. There would be a lot, for if you get to either of those things. I mean, you remember what the 2012 game was like, right? Like, it was just like, it felt like it sucked all the oxygen out of all the rooms everywhere when Notre Dame was playing Alabama. And I think this would feel similar to it. It's almost like, and it's like, if it's Texas, I would have a hard time picking against Notre Dame. If it's Ohio State, it's a different story. But who the hell knows what Ohio State, Texas is going to look like tomorrow night? Like,
Texas is so inconsistent. I just don't trust them.
I'm just saying, like, we see guys go out with like major injuries all the time. Like, if Ohio State loses another offensive lineman, or like, what if Jeremiah Smith turns an ankle or something? Like,
no, Texas can absolutely beat Ohio State. I'm just saying, like, we were talking about picking them. And I think they'll at least cover, and it's going to be a de facto home game for them. And again, I think if Ohio State could do this, what they've done the last 2 weeks, every week, they would have done it. It's not that easy. And Texas and Notre Dame have good defenses. But I'm just saying, as far as like picking or like who do you have faith in? Yeah, Texas at their best is good, but they've just been so darn inconsistent all year long that, I'm not ready to get behind them to say they're going to win the national championship. But I give them more than a puncher's chance against Ohio State. I do. Yeah.
I think if you're Notre Dame, you want Texas to beat Ohio State, right?
Yeah. And I think Freeman wants that. Like, I don't think he needs.
Well, Jeremiah Love after the game said, we want Ohio State.
Okay. But like, did he say Freeman wants it, or did like
he was like, I think it was we in reference to like, we lost to them last year in kind of a not great way. Like, we want to prove that we're better than that.
I get that. I think if you gave Freeman a dose of true serum, I think he's genuine in his "it's not about me" spiel he always gives.
Yeah.
And I just think it's going to be all about him if it is Ohio State. And it's just another thing he does not need or want to deal with when he's preparing his team for a championship game. Not to say it wouldn't be fun, but that's kind of how I feel about it. Let's go to Jay McCormick. Pete, going into halftime during the ESPN interview, Freeman emphatically said we need to run the ball better and we have to stop the run. Did the coaches talk about what they did better in the second half?
So I don't know if I referenced like sort of what Al Golden talked about. But he said like they had a very basic call sheet in the first half, and they did a terrible job setting the edge. They did a terrible job playing with the correct depth. They lost contain. They didn't get off blocks. It was just sort of like they didn't play well. I didn't get a chance to talk to Denbrock about it, although it sounds like McElroy explained like they had a lot more quick hitting run plays than they did in the first half. So I think both those things were true. I was surprised because usually when you talk to Al Golden about schematical stuff, he's like, yeah, I'm not really going to get into that. And tonight he was like, yeah, I don't want to get into this, but here's what happened. And it was just like, we didn't play well. Like the guys just didn't meet the standard that they have for being fundamentally sound. And I mean, in some ways, I think they were fortunate that Penn State wasn't able to gash them that way. That kind of gets back to it really shouldn't have been 10-3 at halftime if you're Penn State. And Notre Dame was fortunate enough they were able to hold them to that.
Brandon McCarthy, Steve Angeli's drive will go down in history. New Jersey strong. I mean, it's pretty remarkable. It's such a snapshot of the game, but it's the only offense they had in the first half. And again,
right.
The guy's a gamer. He won MVP of game. Leonard was god awful in the first half. He just looked like he was seeing ghosts out there. And, he didn't have a whole lot of help. He was getting physically beaten up. And Angeli comes in, and you kind of know they're going to throw it every time there. And he made it happen. Again, I think the biggest play of the game was them recovering that fumble because he got crushed on that play. And it looked live like Penn State was going to recover it. And I just think going into halftime without any points on that down note would have been absolutely devastating. It would have been like the knockout blow that never really came. But to get them in field goal range and get them on the board, and again, we know all about the middle eight. What I think we were all thinking about when we saw Notre Dame win the coin toss. Which is very, very, very important.
Yeah, I thought that was huge.
Daniel Massoud, can we talk about Jeremiah Love's touchdown? That might be the most grown man run I've seen at any level. It's up there. It was really impressive. Guy at Syracuse had a game-winning touchdown this year at UNLV that was very similar, but like this one just
my current colleague Scott Docterman tweeted out the Michigan State touchdown run in the Big Ten championship game for like 10 years ago or something.
To like 12-minute drive or whatever.
Yeah, I can't remember who the running back was, but just like where he ground through three guys and like was reaching the ball out over the end zone only to sense that it was about to get batted away, so he pulled it back and then put it back on a different level to score. That was awesome. It would have been impressive if he had two good knees, but he only had one, and he still managed to pull that off. So he was a delight to talk to after the game as well.
The best players almost always are, at least at Notre Dame.
Yeah, that's true. But like he cut it loose in a way that, God, what was his quote here? We went out there and played like the dogs that we are. We ain't no little dogs. We're big dogs. They was the little dogs today, little cats, whatever you want to call them.
Like he's great.
Jeremiah Love, you are a gem.
Jeremiah Uso-Karamoah was great. Like I just feel like historically the best players they've had.
Yeah, it's just like
awesome to talk to.
When you can get them in locker room situations like that, where it's just like 1-on-1 or 1-on-2, like you get some good stuff that way. So that was a very fun part of these last two games. Is you felt like you were getting like real authentic post game sound and emotion from these guys that otherwise you sort of lose at a podium in front of like 25 reporters.
Patrick Carter, kudos to y'all for putting on a live show late tonight. Thank you all for joining us this late at night. I created the room earlier, and then Pete was busy with some locker room stuff. I thought, all right, I'll shut it down. I don't want everyone waiting here for possibly hours, but you guys turned out tonight. Thank you. I want to say you with Tim last week after Georgia broke the NIU record for most viewed YouTube episode we've had. I'm betting this one will eventually break that. Maybe not at 2:35 a.m. Central Time, but
take your time. You have until like noon tomorrow.
We will get there. Cayman Beavers, I love y'all's podcast. Listen every week. And what was the difference between Riley Leonard and Angeli? Thank you, Cayman. I mean, Leonard's a huge run threat every single play, and he never goes down. I mean, how many third and shorts did he have where he barely got it, but like you knew it was coming and you knew he was going to get it?
Yeah, he did that. I'm gonna go through the box score and figure that out. Like, yeah, he finished with as impressive as Jeremiah Love's 11 carries for 45 yards are. Riley Leonard also impressive, 18 carries for 35 yards. I go back and figure out how many of those were first downs because man, there were some and shorts. There was a 3rd and 3, I think. Like it just Notre Dame had just enough in so many ways tonight. Notre Dame felt like the team where they just had enough. I don't like if this game had gone to overtime, I think Penn State would have won. But then I think Notre Dame would have found how to just have enough to win in overtime.
Yeah, we talked about this. Overtime's not real football. Like I just don't.
And they just couldn't get out of their own way. They couldn't make a play.
Yeah, overtime to me is just literally a coin toss. I mean,
yeah, it's true. No, that's a penalty shootout, which you know that you love.
Coin toss like the NFL, which it literally comes down to sometimes too. William Matt, it's good to see you, Matt. Hope you're well, sir. Also, a nice hat. Damn, thank you. And a nod to the championship game that I probably will not be going to, unfortunately, but thank you. Oh, another hat question. Irish hat. Is that a Bear Bryant hat behind you, Matt? Is that a nod to his record versus Notre Dame? You know what? I should admit this on the show. I bought it at the Notre Dame Alabama game just because it reminded me of my grandmother, who's actually a huge Notre Dame fan. And she told me I got something for her at the time. So coaches don't dress the way they used to, that's for sure. And by the way, I gotta say, biggest Notre Dame game in 12 years, and Marcus Freeman's wearing something that does not have an Under Armour logo on it. How does Under Armour let that happen? I don't know. It was a nice, very nice zip up, though. They should sell that. I think
that was good. That's some good style points down the back.
Mark Trippietti, every player that steps on the field, no matter where they are on the depth chart, is ready to play and contribute, no matter the leverage. Yeah, I think the most impressive part about what Marcus Freeman has done and what this team has done is keep everyone locked. And when I say everyone, I mean everyone locked in this late in the season. There's never been a college football season that's gone this late. Notre Dame football has never played, 15 games in a season.
Yeah.
And they're hurt. They're sick. They're getting beaten up in the game. And you've got your preseason starting left tackle who took 6 snaps on special teams last week coming in to play right guard in an emergency situation and holding his own against a dominant defensive front. And I think you can go up and down the roster and see stories like that throughout. And I just think that's so important, so crucial in this day and age of college football when the seasons are as long as they are and when in some ways it's just survival of the fittest.
Yeah, I asked Steve Angeli about is this easy or difficult to stay ready? And he said Coach Freeman preaches team glory number 1, and then number 2, delayed gratification. Talks a lot about falling in love with the work every week. Focus on your reps, or you're going to miss your opportunity. The culture in our program is next man up. Guys in the room all prepared the same way, like the starters, and this is a proof of concept that what they're doing works, and whatever their head coach is selling, they're buying it. It's much easier for Jeremiah Love to buy it than Aeneas Williams.
Sure.
Much easier for Riley Leonard to buy it than Steve Angeli. And yet Steve Angeli and Aeneas Williams are buying it just the same.
Yeah, I don't know how many times we said this in the spring or after the spring. College football in 2024, 2025, I just assumed someone was transferring in that quarterback room. If you were to sell Steve Angeli or Kenny Minchey on staying this year, what was your pitch? Obviously, it was team glory and being one play away from coming in, but they all say that, right? For him, and even Freeman said as much. I think he was on with SVP, or maybe it was something I saw on TV on the post game. But it's Angeli in particular. He's that's a guy who could have easily gone to the transfer portal in this day and age, and he didn't. And having guys like that to count on a moment's notice. Very, very crucial.
Yeah. I mean, they wouldn't be where they are they wouldn't have even made the playoff without the graduate transfers that helped them beat Georgia. But they wouldn't have won tonight if they didn't have backups being ready to go, no matter how much or how little they played.
Americano and Marina Quest say hello from the Philippines. We are ND. Thank you for your support of the show. Please comment. Tell me what time it is over there right now. Hopefully it's a more normal time than what we're dealing with here back in the States. But thanks as always for the support. Philafel. I love the secondary. Was the Penn State wide receivers, the man coverage by ND corners. Can it be replicated if they play Ohio State? It was a man coverage by ND corners. And I don't think Penn State's receivers are that good, but Notre Dame made sure
Probably
of
not
that.
going to hold Ohio State's receivers to 0 catches.
I mean, it's not going to translate to next week, and yet you feel better about it. I mean,
yeah. No, it's like
it's just incredible to say you held
Yeah.
wide receivers without a catch.
It is. I would, as much as I think Ohio State is a much more difficult opponent than Texas for obvious reasons, like I think I'd like to see the matchup of Notre Dame's DBs against those receivers. Like Notre Dame would have to be great, like great.
Any chance Benjamin Morrison can play?
Yeah, I mean, the season has been so long. Charles Jagas had a season-ending injury, is now going to start in the national championship game, most likely. I'm not sure, but I played great tonight. So it, I mean, look, they Notre Dame wouldn't be intimidated by Ohio State's wideouts. They already played them twice. Like this team knows what that group
They didn't play
is
Jeremiah
about.
Smith, Pete.
They did not play Jeremiah Smith, but they played Marvin Harrison Jr. twice.
Yeah.
You know?
And they did really good against him.
I mean, the first year it was Jackson Smith and Jigma, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Emeka Buka. And then last year,
Buka was the best one in that game.
Yeah.
Best one in both
last
games.
year it was Abuka and Harrison. Now it's Smith, Abuka, Carnell Tate. Like, I get it. They're awesome. I don't know. I'd like to see how that matchup would happen. And especially like Ohio State's offensive line is like kind of just okay. I just wonder if Al Golden can actually play man defense against them. I'm guessing not. But you don't have to worry about the tight end like Tyler Warren either.
Kim Beavers asked what I was going to get into. Do we have the most injuries out of any teams left in the playoffs? I would think so, but I think Ohio State's had 24 different offensive line combinations this year. If you can get to Will Howard, he's been prone to make mistakes, big ones. He did it against. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I just can't see you anymore.
I know my camera just went out. That was interesting. Let me try to fix this while I am here.
Everything's
failing for us this hour.
Yeah, I feel like Will Howard is somebody who you can get to make a mistake. Although, like, look, we're covering Riley Leonard, who threw two terrible pictures as Matt returns to the feed. And I didn't want this podcast to wrap up before saying that Tyler Warren is freaking awesome. And like it was really cool to see him play live because there are just not a lot of tight ends like him. I've covered some that are similar, but just how he's used was so creative. It's rare to see like Xavier Watts be dragged forward by somebody, but like that's a unique dude out there. That was a fun player to watch live.
Yeah, he's almost like a video game player, and I say that not necessarily in the cliche sense. He doesn't get tired, it doesn't seem like. Other than like when he fell down hard on his head and sat out a couple plays on the sideline. I mean, you could look at any one play he does and say, all right, yeah, other guys can do it. When he does it every single play and is moving so much, it's really impressive. I was thinking Penn State would overuse him a little too much in the regular season. I just don't know how he physically can hold up the way he has, but it's been really impressive and help. Maybe he should have played quarterback tonight for them.
He was very effective when he did.
Time for a couple more before I think you got a flight to catch and I'm hanging on for dear life here. All right. Jason Villalobos, Freeman has won us more playoff games in 1 month than what BK did throughout his entire tenure. This is true. It's more than a lot of people. I think 3 now.
Oh man, yeah. It's easier to win a national championship at LSU. The Notre Dame thing is not wearing well for.
I will say he got the exact same place ND is in year 3 as well.
That's true.
And I don't think Ohio State
feel
will
the same way. No, it did not.
Well, it was more unlikely because they were unranked in the preseason. But no, this one feels more real and sustainable. Without question. I don't know if this is even true, but it's a funny comment. Redemax Holt, if that's named after the burger joint in New Buffalo, My
Hope
hat's
so.
off to you, my friend.
Great
Revenge for
spot.
Franklin ranking 12-0 ND, number 4 in the 2012 coaches poll that counted in BCS computer. I don't know if that's true. It sounds cool.
I would need it to be true at 3:45 in the morning.
I believe it because he was at Vandy then, and that was like the height of SEC. Like you think they're bad now, as far as pumping their chests, like 2012, and especially after that Notre Dame Bama game. That was like, see, we play real football down here.
Yeah, James.
Adam Joseph, wicked playoff beard, Matt. Where is yours, Pete?
I cannot grow one.
Really?
I mean, I could. It would look terrible. It wouldn't look like yours. I've tried it. I'm not going to, but I'm not going to. Maybe it'll be an off-season project for me, but it would not be popular in my house at all.
I've trying to think. My kids are torn on it. I think my wife likes it. My lesbian barista loves it, for whatever that's worth. But I don't. It's very comfortable. It's very comfortable in the winter. I told myself I won't cut it till all this health stuff's behind me, and here we are still on January 10th. But I'm enjoying it. Andre King, friend of the show, Matt. We go to the championship. What's up, Andre? Thanks for tuning in with us this late. Holy crap, we still have a ton of questions. I don't think we'll be able to get to all of them, but we will definitely be back with multiple episodes between now and 10 days from now when Notre Dame. Hey, you laughed at me before the Georgia Tech game, and I said, oh, maybe I'll go to that game when they're in the national championship on January 20th. Except I won't be gone.
It's what a master stroke by Notre Dame to convince Georgia Tech to move the game to Mercedes-Benz so like Notre Dame could get an advanced look at the stadium before they return. I think we could make some pretty out there jokes, like just to be jerks. The idea of like Notre Dame playing in the national championship game that week was so far away. Like it wasn't even absurd enough to joke about. They're like, ooh, maybe they'll be back here in January. No, I don't think so. But lo and behold, be flying to Atlanta a week from today, I guess.
Friday, I think. Yeah.
As it's now Friday as we're finishing up this recording, but yeah, it's wild, man. And yet, like, we felt like this team was built to make a run in a national championship, but there are 7 or 8 other teams that also felt that way. Notre Dame had the wherewithal and the grit and toughness and all the adjectives you want to throw at to actually get there. And soon we get to figure out who they're going to play.
The Chop 66, my daughter, born January 3rd, has only ever known ND to be clutch to make the national championship game. My oldest is January 2nd. However, you can blame me. I was born January 7th, 89, which I think was 4 or 5 days after Notre Dame's last national championship. So the curse of me, I'm afraid.
There's a fun question from Jackson Hignite. Could Freeman be the first coach to average more major bowls than years coached?
I suppose. Well, are we counting Indiana now? I don't know.
No, that's a good point.
Does this count as a top 5 loss for James Franklin? Notre Dame was a 7 seed. I don't know.
Yeah. It's whatever negative this can count for James Franklin, it counts.
It was Redemax, of course. The burger that made New Buffalo famous. He ranked Bama, Georgia, and Florida ahead of them. That sounds about right based on how I remember that year with those 3 teams.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And how you remember James Franklin.
Awesome. I think we'll get out of here on that note. Thank you all for staying with us and continuing to send in some questions. Pete's got a flight to catch in a matter of a couple hours, and we want him fresh and ready for our lineup of podcasts that I'm sure will be trotting out all week long. Should have some pretty good guests lined up, but we'll see whether it's Texas or Ohio State. Do you have a prediction for that one?
I like Ohio State. I feel like Texas has been like wobbling for a while, and Ohio State's going to like kind of kick the legs out from under them.
I'll go Ohio State 27-24. I think it'll be closer than people think, but I think Ohio State ultimately is a better team and prevails.
Yeah. So it'll be like I'll be watching it with a different interest than I thought I was going to. Like, I guess that's
you picked ND. That's not true.
Yeah, I picked ND. I mean, just like the fact that I'm going to go home and watch a game and be like, well, this is who Notre Dame's playing in the national championship game is still like a little trippy. So it'll be fun to actually sit down and watch that.
The fourth place Big Ten team is the favorite to win the national title. Think about that.
This college football playoff, man, is just ruining the sport. No fun. These games are terrible.
Too many blowouts.
Who wants to watch this? Oh wait, everybody does. So it'll be fun. All right. On that note, we'll wrap up. He's Matt in Chicago. I'm Pete in Fort Lauderdale for the next few hours until I be Pete back in South Bend. We'll be back next week. Probably multiple podcasts. Hopefully get some good guests on. I think it'll not be that difficult to find people to talk about Notre Dame at this point.
Awesome.
All right.
Thanks all for joining us.
Thanks for being with us on this latest episode of The Independent.